Hello and welcome to the 14th episode of Season 3 of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. This is the 78th episode of the show and the 55th regular episode. Today, Dr. Natasha Rachell will be joining me to share some of her strategies for making instruction engaging. Natasha and I share a lot of laughs, but she also shares about choice boards, student choice, the Flipgrid Discovery Library, Microsoft tools like PowerPoint and my favorite, Sway, and Wakelet, and Mentimeter, and Buncee, and the awesome Minecraft Good Trouble project. Let's get to it.
I'm Angela Kelly Robeck, host of the Empowered Principal Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast with Jake Miller.
Hello, welcome in. My name is Jake, and I'm here to talk to you about duct tape and educational technology and how the two fit together to form a goofy metaphor, but also an EdTech integration mindset that I believe can make the selection of tech tools for your learning environment a little bit less stressful. I'm also here to share with you a really fun and useful interview with digital learning specialist, author, and my new BFF, Dr. Natasha Rachell, in which we focus on creating engaging instruction. Dr. Rachell's background in the high school science classroom, combined with her work as one of the authors of the Microsoft Infused Classroom and her work as one of the creators of the Minecraft Good Trouble lessons, is a surefire recipe for some great learning for you. But that's not all that she brings. You'll be able to hear her smile right through your earbuds or speakers. Trust me. This one was a really fun one. A few things before we get to all of that fun, though. First up, bonus episodes. I hope to have another bonus coming to you next week, so make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss it. And then 2 weeks from today, hopefully, I'll have another regular episode. And again, make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss them. Next, a request. If you enjoyed today's episode, and I think you will, I'd be honored if you'd head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for the show. It's that little piece of social proof that a fellow educator might need to turn them from a podcast browser to a full-fledged duct taper. And not only might your review help another educator make the decision to start listening, it'll also help me. Seriously, this has been a tough year for all of us, and little things like someone telling you, hey, you're doing a great job. I appreciate what you're doing. That really helps. So if you enjoyed this episode and you could spare a minute, a review would put a big old smile on my face. Next up, it's calendar time. No, not like in first grade where you sing the days of the week and look at the calendar. This is the part where I tell you what's coming up on my calendar. Over the next week or so, I've got the 6th and 7th parts of a series of professional developments, actually 5th, 6th, and 7th. Parts of a series of professional developments that I've been honored to provide to the educators in the Sylvan Union School District in California. This weekend, we'll be launching the 9th cohort of my virtual course called Best Practices and Tools for Learning in All Settings, which reminds me I need to go start preparing the Google Classroom posts. Anyhow, I am so psyched about how well received this course has been. I really thought it was a one-off summer PD thing this past summer, but the fact that there have been 8 now almost starting 9 cohorts just blows my mind. I've been so proud of the educators that participated in this 12-hour course. You can get details at jakemiller.net/KSU course 2020. It also looks like we're going to run a 10th cohort this summer. Details coming about that soon. If you sign up for my newsletter at jakemiller.net/newsletter, you'll know for sure when it's announced. In a few weeks, I'll be doing 2 sessions and the Meet the Podcasters session in the virtual Spring Q. In June, I'll be keynoting the summit at Murray State, as well as WitCon and the Panhandle STEM Conference. I am super excited for these things. If you've got an event coming up, I would love to be a part of it, whether it's on a stage or on a screen. My favorite thing to do is speak to and work with educators. So if you're planning an event, please head over to jakemiller.net/speaking to see some speaking videos and to send me a message. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me just grab my soapbox from over here. Yeah. There we go. That's perfect. Climb up on there. Michael Jordan had a swing that looked like Charles Barkley swatting at a mosquito with a 5-iron. This quote from Michael Bauman of The Ringer about Michael Jordan's attempt to play Major League Baseball highlights the common belief about the attempt. Jordan wasn't any good. But let's look at the full quote. Despite having a swing that looks like Charles Barkley swatting at a mosquito with a 5-iron, Jordan still went into Double-A cold and hit .202. By the time he got to the Arizona Fall League that year, he was starting to blend in and look more comfortable. So was he a failure? Cleveland baseball manager Terry Francona, who was Jordan's Birmingham Barons coach, said in the Last Dance documentary, "I can't believe he actually hit .202. He drove in 50 runs. We had a lot of good prospects that didn't drive in 50 runs. In my opinion, with 1,500 at-bats, he would have found a way to get to the major leagues." When you compare it to what Jordan was doing the previous year, leading his team to their third consecutive NBA championship, his own third consecutive NBA Finals MVP award, falling just shy of a third straight NBA Most Valuable Player award, his 9th straight NBA All-Star Game appearance, his 7th straight All-NBA First Team honor, his 6th straight NBA All-Defensive First Team honor, his 7th straight year leading the league in scoring, his 3rd time leading the league in steals, and, being one of the most recognizable and popular humans on the planet, when you compare that to his attempt at Major League Baseball, it's easy to see the baseball thing as a failure. But really, in a typical season, around 1,000 players are signed to Major League contracts, and only about 750 or so step onto the field in a Major League game. Minor leaguers, like Jordan, are at the bottom of that list of 1,000. So if he was the worst in the league, which he probably wasn't, that would make him roughly the 1,000th best baseball player in the world. That's pretty good, I think. Why am I talking about Michael Jordan anyhow? Because this reminds me of teachers. Seriously, hear me out. We haven't spent years dunking basketballs and shooting Nike commercials, but we have spent years honing our craft in our classrooms, just like Jordan did on the basketball court. And we're really good at it. But this year, we got assigned to a baseball team. Wait, what? Seriously, in my most recent episode, Joe Marquez and I talked about how difficult concurrent teaching is. Yesterday, I was helping prepare a group of teachers from the Sylvan Union School District for concurrent teaching, and it dawned on me. They are Michael Jordan after he first retired from basketball. We are Michael Jordan walking away from the game that we were the best in the world at, except not by choice. We were at the top of our face-to-face teaching game, but were forced by circumstances out of anyone's control to play a new game. Teacher of the Year honors, happy students, great standardized test scores, if we didn't care about those. But anyhow, we were rock stars. But now, we've got to play baseball. And look at Jordan. He was pretty good right away. Batted .202. That means he got hits on 20% of his at-bats against pitchers who were among the 1,000 best players in baseball. He hit 50 RBIs. Think about it. He came into the league as a gifted athlete, fierce competitor, and motivated student of the game. And that was enough to put him in the top 1,000. And that's us. He wasn't as good at baseball as he was at basketball, but he was pretty good, and he should be proud. And you're probably not as good at concurrent teaching as you are at fully in-person teaching, but you're pretty good, and you should be proud. Just like Jordan in baseball, you came into concurrent teaching with tremendous teaching skills, pedagogical knowledge, content knowledge, and a toolbox of techniques. You've switched sports, but you brought plenty of good stuff with you to help you get by. And you're doing pretty stinking good at this new sport. And not perfect, not as good as the other sport, but pretty good. And as Francona said, give Jordan some more at-bats, and he would have gotten even better. And that's the same for us. Every day, we get better at this. Just remind yourself of that. Even Jordan was only average when he started doing something new. But every day he improved. And if he had more time, he may have been a superstar on the baseball field. We never found out if he would, because he went back to the NBA, won 3 more championships, 2 more MVP awards, and countless other accolades. And the good news is that we get to do the same. Someday, we'll be off the metaphorical baseball field, which I love baseball, so maybe I don't want to leave baseball, but you get my point. We'll be off the metaphorical baseball field, out of the minor leagues, and back on the metaphorical basketball court, hoisting trophies above our heads. And we'll be even better then than we were before this detour that we've taken. So, when your concurrent lesson doesn't go as well as you had hoped, just tell yourself, I am Michael Jordan playing baseball. But soon, I'll be Michael Jordan playing basketball again.
Today's guest.
All right, today my guest is Dr. Natasha Rachell, and she is a former high school science teacher, currently serving as a digital learning specialist. She's one of the authors of the Microsoft-infused classroom and one of the creators of the Minecraft Good Trouble lessons, and believes that you could live in both Google and Microsoft. And I've got proof because she and I are in a Google Doc right now. Natasha is passionate about exploring your why and teacher self-care. Before I bring her on the air, you could follow her on Twitter at @AppsitNatasha. That's APSIT Natasha, or on Instagram at Natasha B. Rachell, or her website, natasharachel.com. And those links are all, as always, in the show notes, but not just in the show notes, actually here in the podcast with us is Natasha. Natasha, welcome in.
Hey, Jake, welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I am so glad to have you on the show. We were kind of geeking out when we first connected at the beginning, excited to talk. And I was saying, I've been wanting to have you on the show since June of 2019, which the show was just like a little toddler at the time. The show was about 5 months old at that time. And I saw you on stage at Flipgrid Live in Philly at ISTE 19. It was called a mic drop moment, but you totally did drop the mic. Your little talk was amazing. It was really cool. And I was like, she's got to be on the podcast. And I can't believe it's taken this long.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I can't believe that was almost 2 years ago. It's crazy that it's been so long. I have been total fan of Jake Miller forever. So this is, like I told you before we started recording, I'm totally fangirling. And it's just a pleasure to be talking to you. I'm so excited to talk to you. We have so much to talk about.
We sure do. But we are both. I'm not fangirling. I'm fan. Did you ever notice that fanboying is not a saying? Like, it sounds weird if I say I'm totally fanboying right now. Does that sound okay? Can I say that?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Okay, I'm totally fanboying right now because I have seen your book that you wrote with, and it's you and Holly Clark and Joe and Kristen Merrill and
Felisa Ford and Tanya Averith.
And Felisa and Tanya, and amazing work. I'm not a Microsoftie. I apologize. We're going to try to change it tonight. And Mike Tholfsen's been trying to change it as well, too, with the stuff he shares online. Microsoft has some great stuff. But I got to say, what I've seen from that book, even outside of the Microsoft realm, is just so educationally relevant, the stuff that you guys have in there.
Yeah, there is definitely a space for both. I'm a firm believer that you can live in Google and Microsoft. And I know we're going to talk about that some more. It was such an amazing experience to work with the crew on the book. It was so funny to see the way that it just all came together. There were times we were driving in cars and, we would be on hotspots trying to get it all edited and put together, but just really some great practical ways to make sure that it wasn't just tools that we were spitting out at the readers, that there were some good practical ways to use the tools in the classroom. So it all came together really, really good.
Yeah, that's a powerhouse team. Congratulations on the success of that book too. That's really, really cool stuff.
Thank you.
So, and tell me, I noticed in your bio the DR period in front of your name there. That I don't believe was there when you were speaking at Flipgrid Live back in 2019, was it?
No, it wasn't. So it just became official last April. So April 2020 will be 1 year. And I'm still super giddy every time somebody says it because it just doesn't seem real. It was a long time coming. That could be a whole other podcast about that whole experience.
Oh, well, congrats.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
That is so cool. And so former high school science teacher, I was going to throw that in there. I am currently teaching 8th grade science in my role, and I am I'm tapping back into my inner science nerd. So it had been 9 years since I last taught science, and getting back into it, I was like, I don't know. But then as soon as you start talking about the science, I'm like, oh yeah, this is my jam. I like this stuff, right?
Yeah, you just geek out over it. I have been out of the science classroom since 2010. But as soon as I step foot, I still get to go to classrooms, obviously not now because of COVID, but I still get to go to classrooms. And every time I go into a science classroom, it just takes you right back, and you just jump right back in, and you're like, yes, you just can't be away from it. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And it's cool seeing the kids there's something special that happens in a science classroom where they're kind of figuring out the whys of things. I kind of that's a nice little segue into the other part of your bio there. But they're figuring out like why things happen in Earth or in space or with in biology or whatever it might be. They're getting an understanding of what's happening in these things and being investigators and thinking through things and wondering things and lots of. We're going to talk about things that are engaging today, and I just think it's so engaging.
Yeah, it is. It's really cool. Like some of the best compliments that you can receive as a teacher, and I don't know if you've had this experience yet with me teaching high school students, is all the years later when they message you or find you on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. And like how many of them, especially during the pandemic, have reached out and said to me like, wow, because sometimes I did teach environmental science at one point, and how they're just like following the science and they're remembering like things that we talked about in class. And so they're putting like 2 and 2 together from what we talked about, and they're seeing it in real life. And so it makes me feel so good that they're remembering, what I taught, and they soaked it in and remembering the why. So that's really cool. Yeah.
I haven't gotten many messages that relate to certain like content things that I taught to kids, but I do hear from former students regularly. And like recently, a month or two ago, I heard from a former student, and he said, "Yeah, so I'm a teacher now. I'm teaching choir, or I forget. I think he's choir and orchestra, maybe just choir. I think just choir. But anyhow, he said I went to a training, and they said you should get on Twitter to learn about educational technology, and they told us like 5 people to follow, and Mr. Miller, you were the first one they named." And I was like, I know that guy. And I'm like, oh gosh, I feel so old.
Oh my goodness. How awesome is that?
Yeah, it was funny. Then we ended up connecting over it. But he called me Jake in the message. And I was like, I don't know if I'm there yet.
Yeah, I'm not there. Mine still call me Miss Rachel. So yeah, I'm not there yet.
All right. Well, Natasha, even though we are giggling already, we're going to play a quick game. You ready for a game?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
2 truths and 1 lie.
Okay, we are going to try out a game of 2 truths and 1 lie. You're going to tell me 3 statements.
Okay.
One will be a lie, and I am going to try to guess which one it is.
All
Spoiler alert, I will get it wrong, and then I'll get confused about whether I figured it out or not, because I always tend to get confused during this game. But we'll see how it goes. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, go for it.
All right. 2 truths and a lie. Here we go. I have a twin.
Okay.
I have been on a TV show before. I have never been in a car accident before.
Okay. So this is kind of ironic because 2 weeks ago on the show was Joe Marquez, and Joe was on a TV show. He was on Judge Judy.
Really?
Yes. And a month ago, he by the way, he put out a challenge to see if anybody could find the recording. We'll see if anybody tracks that down.
Wow.
And a month ago was James Varlak, and James is a twin, and and he has another set of siblings that are also twins. So like
Get
2 pairs of
outta
twins.
here.
So you're this is a theme during the months of January and February here. And the car accident thing, I'm hoping that's true. That seems unlikely. So I'm going to guess that the car accident thing is a lie. You have been in a car accident.
That you are so right. You are good.
Okay, good. Well,
So I do have a twin brother. I think I talk about him a lot. So I think a lot of people probably know that.
Okay.
So he's 9 minutes older than me. And I have been on TV before. When I was a junior in high school, I actually grew up in Southern California. And so lots of TV connections in the Southern California area. And so from going to cheerleading camp and that kind of thing every summer, our cheerleading coach got a phone call one day that they were looking for some extras for the TV show Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
What? That was my favorite show.
Yes. And so she just happened to be the person that got the phone call. And so I was one of 5 or 6, I can't remember, cheerleaders from my high school that got selected to go. We went every day for a week. We drove into Burbank, California, and on that Friday we recorded. It's funny that this show still airs to this day. If you ever catch an episode of Hanging with Mr. Cooper, it's actually on Hulu. My son found it.
Nice.
I can't remember the episode number. I think it was season 3, if I'm not mistaken. But we were wearing yellow and red uniforms. We didn't get to talk. If we talked, they would have had to pay us like royalties or something.
Right. Which, God forbid, right?
Right. So we made like $500 for the week.
What?
Yeah. Some of my
You would have done it for free. Nobody knew you would have done it for free.
Right. Some of my high school students, even like to this day, they'll be like, were you on TV? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that was me.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm going to have to track that down. I used to love that show.
Yes.
That was like the highlight of, what was that called? TGIF, right?
Yes,
Remember?
it was.
Right?
Yes.
What was it? Step by Step, and
There was some show about some dinosaurs, like little
yeah,
dinosaurs.
not the mama, whatever that show was called.
Jake, you have a good memory.
Oh, those are the golden days right there. Like, I can't forget those days. And then what was the Urkel show? I want to say Family Ties. That's not Family Ties.
Family Matters.
Family Matters. That's right.
Family Ties was good too, though.
Yeah. I am now going to go watch those shows. But the sad thing is, those are like Nick at Night shows now.
Yeah.
Right?
So maybe
Like, how did our shows become Nick at Night? What
like
happened?
Nick at Night when we were growing up was like I Love Lucy. Like that was all the black and white shows.
Right.
Yeah.
How are there shows on Nick at Night that have color in them? I was watching the other day on one of those. I wasn't Nick at Night, but it was like a station. I was my students were saying the other day. I was talking about a show I used to like as a teenager, and they're like, "Oh, that's on Nick at Night," and I was like, "What?
Oh my goodness!
What? No, it can't be. I am not old.
I feel old. Oh my goodness."
All right. Well, I'm going to track down this episode of Hanging with Mr. Cooper, which was my jam. Yeah, it was a good show.
Yeah, it was. Good times.
I'm looking up. Nice. That's cool. All right. So another thing, actually little known thing that was on TGIF back in the day, there was a show that was on temporarily called Educational Duct Tape. Did you ever catch that one?
I did.
And in it, the host would always ask the guest a question that a teacher might have, and the guest would come up with ways that educational technology could help the teacher answer that question or solve that problem. Do you remember that?
I do. I used to watch it every single Friday.
Right. So let's play Educational Duct Tape. Oh gosh, I've lost it. This is one of the weirder segues into the main part of an interview that I've done.
What's the theme music for that show? Do you remember?
Do 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 do. Actually, somebody told me that my theme music is essentially a digitized version of what kids play during violin lessons. So that was the theme to the show.
Okay.
And then I looked it up, and she was right. It totally was. But there should have been, if it was on TGIF, there would have been some like cheesy singing that went with it too. Like I could just hear the theme song to Step by Step in my head, or like Full House, but like a version of that about educational duct tape. With like a montage of me talking to other EdTech teachers about Flipgrid and Pear Deck and stuff. That would have been a good show. It's surprising that it didn't last very long on TGIF.
I know it had such good ratings,
it got replaced by the dinosaur show, unfortunately. Not the mama. That happened and I was done for. Okay. Anyhow, in reality, it's just a podcast. It was not on TGIF, but I do have an educational duct tape question for you. So my question for you is, how can I develop engaging instruction?
Yes. All right. So I know this has been like the hot button topic, especially since March 13th, right? Like, I think we quickly learned that it couldn't be just business as usual. So I know in our classrooms, that's like our goal always anyway, right? Is to create these engaging lessons, but especially since we transitioned, into online learning. And as we now start to figure out what's next. And so there's a couple things that I kind of want to highlight on. The one thing that I always talk to teachers about is meeting students where they are. And when I say that, what I mean is not where they are from like a grade level perspective or like a leveling perspective, meeting students where they are in regard to their interests. And the one example that I always share, and if anyone's ever heard my keynote, I always talk about a student that I used to have named Sheldon. And I gave this, you will love this story, Jake.
Okay.
When I was teaching environmental sciences one year, it was a senior class that I had, and Sheldon was like this super quiet student. And, you know, he would do his work, but he was super, super quiet. And I didn't really know a lot about him, just, you know, did his work enough to get by or whatever and pass the class and whatnot. So it was a Monday. We were talking about the water cycle, carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle. And on this Monday, I don't know if I was being a lazy teacher this day or if I don't know what the deal was, but I gave them this project and I said, hey, I'm going to give you a week to come up with whatever you want to come up with to show me that you have mastered these 3 cycles. Pick one of the cycles and show me that you've mastered the cycle.
Yeah, which translated into you hadn't made an assessment yet, and you needed to give an assessment. And you're like, make up your own darn assessment.
Right.
Okay,
We've all had those days. We've all had those days. And so, yeah. So, and that's probably what happened in hindsight. It was a long time ago. I'm being honest. We've all had those days, right?
Yep.
And so I gave them a week. It could be whatever you want it to be. Bring it back on Friday. The next day, so this was on a Monday, the next day, Sheldon walks up to my desk and he slaps down a CD on my desk, and in black Sharpie on the CD, it says water cycle wrap. And this is back in the day when we had like the big, like hard, clunky desktop computers where you had to push the button to make like the little CD drive thing come out. Yeah. And so he's like smiling, and I'm 5'3.5" on a good day. Sheldon is like 6 foot, like, you know, Sheldon is like a big guy. Yeah. And so he's like, Miss Rachel, are you going to put it in? Like, play it. And I'm like, okay, Sheldon, I'll play it. Like, go sit down. Let me get attendance. I had him first period. So, you know, let me drink my coffee and get situated. And he was so excited. So he made me play it for the class, which was, you know, surprising because he was so quiet. Long story short, too late. Sheldon had gone to the studio that night. He laid down a track. So he was into music. His thing was music production. He produced music for people. He was like a rapper on the side, I guess I came to find out. And so he went to the studio, laid down a track, did the research about the water cycle, and rapped about it from top to bottom. He even gave me a shout out in the rap. Nice. Which at that point I was like A+ for Sheldon. All right. But when I assessed the students on these 3 cycles, on the water cycle portion, he scored perfectly. Yeah. And so when I talk about meeting students where they are, like, you really need to figure out what your students' interests are and really hone in on those interests. And so when you give students things like choice boards or, you know, not assessing them the same way every single time, like it doesn't have to be a 5-question quiz every time or a test every time or a Scantron it doesn't have to be that to assess your kids. Like, give them choice, give them options, you know, so that they can really hone in on what interests them. Long story short. Sure.
Yeah, no, it was the right length, because that was a really awesome story. That's a really cool, powerful way to show how important it is to give them those opportunities. And, you know, I do a session about choice boards, which I love talking about choice boards with teachers, because you see the light bulb start going off as you start talking about it with them, as they realize that it's not too big of an ask for them to make one, right? That it is within their reach to do it, and they start realizing how useful it could be for their classroom. But there are a couple different like quotes, like resources from experts that I talk about as we go through it. And one of them comes from Linda Darling Hammond, who is an author, and she says, and I'm quoting her directly here, providing students with multiple ways to demonstrate knowledge and skills increases engagement and learning. And you saw both of those things, right? Mm-hmm. And provides teachers with more accurate understanding of students' knowledge and skills. So you not only was he more engaged, which was the original question, but you got a better measure for how well he understood that than if it had just been a Scantron, like you said, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then there's this other resource I share when we talk about that presentation too, that comes from Alfie Kohn, who is also an educational author, talks a lot about reforms in education and things like that. But he talks about how there was this one study done that just gave students choice over like the order that they do activities in. It didn't even let them choose the activities, or let them get choice over the order they do them in, and even that led to them completing more tasks in less time. So just
Wow.
this little piece of giving them some choice, any level of choice. So by you saying you have a limitless choice, Sheldon, do what you want to do, Sheldon gave you this amazing product and was more engaged in the process, right?
Wow, that is amazing. I
Yeah.
just, the idea of choice, period. And you just
Yeah.
made me think about even us as adults every day, the choices that we make, right?
Right.
Like from what we eat to what we wear.
Right.
Like if you, even when you notice, like in your kids, when you give them choices, you give them the option to make choices. Like I have two kids and they do things totally different, but they
Mm.
may get to the end result,
Yeah.
at some point the same. So yeah,
Right.
absolutely. That's
And
amazing.
it doesn't even matter how much choice. Like obviously more choice is better in most situations, but you think about when I'm making lunch for my kiddos on the weekend, lunch could be a battle if I pick what they're going to eat. Like like what happens at dinner every night, right? One kid inevitably hates whatever we've cooked for dinner, but at lunchtime, if I say we're making grilled cheese, do you want Colby Jack or American on your sandwich? All of a sudden, they're like, I'll take Colby Jack, and they're on board because they had some level of choice,
But
right?
it empowers you, right? Like you made a
Yeah.
choice. It empowers you. Like you take
Yeah.
ownership of that, right? Like
By the way, the correct option is both cheeses.
that's always the right. There's never enough cheese.
There might be bad cheese combinations, but in
Right.
general, you want both of them.
Give me
Okay,
all the cheese.
so I have taken you on a crazy tangent here. So we were talking Sheldon, we were talking
Yeah.
meeting students where they are. So by giving
Yeah.
him that choice, you met him where he was at. You engaged in something that was relevant to him, right?
Absolutely, definitely. A couple other things just to kind of touch on. Educators, what I want teachers and educators to just keep in mind. So when you're talking about giving students choice, that sounds really overwhelming. Like maybe I have to do it all and it's a lot of planning. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Think about tools like, for example, Flipgrid, like the Discovery Library, if that's one of your choices that you want to throw in there, right? The Discovery Library has a ton of resources that are pre-done for you. I think I was on there, what is today? I think I was on there 3 days ago, and there were almost 34,000 topics in the Discovery Library. Like teachers have created amazing resources that are in there ready to go for you.
Yeah. Just because you create a choice board or an opportunity for choice doesn't mean you had to create all the content that's in it, right?
Right, right. So take it and make it your own, like personalize it and make it your own.
Mm-hmm.
What else? When you think about how you're going to present these resources to your students, think outside of the box. So it doesn't have to be like your traditional, like checkerboard, bingo style, choice board kind of thing. You could present it to them. For example, I'm going to totally plug Microsoft here in a Microsoft Sway. For those of you that are not familiar with Microsoft Sway, think of it like a movable PowerPoint. That's the way that I always describe it. Some people are very hesitant about using Microsoft Sway because it's very simple. It's very, it's linear. It either moves vertically or it moves horizontally. And if you're a graphic designer, it's not going to do everything that you want it to do. But for your students, what I always tell people is that you want your students to be able to do two things: visualize and verbalize their thinking. Sway is absolutely perfect for that. It allows them to visualize and verbalize their thinking. It allows you to plug in different multimedia aspects. You can pull in videos. You can pull in Flipgrid, text. You can pull in Twitter posts. You can pull in, images. There's so much stuff you can pull into Sway.
Yeah.
So think about presenting choice boards, if that's what you want to use, into a tool like Sway, or you could even pull it into PowerPoint or Google Slides or a Google site or whatever. You could even pull in a choice board, create it in a Flipgrid group or a Flipgrid topic and present it that way.
Yeah.
You could have a group and have different topics to represent each of the different choices for your students, and then link the resources there. So there's tons of different options out there to give your students choice and really engage your students. And at the end of the day, when you're giving your students choice, they are going to be more engaged because they're going to take that ownership of their learning.
Yeah. Well, so two thoughts coming off of that. Number one, on the idea of all these different options for where to build something like a choice board, I always tell educators that there is essentially no wrong tool to use in that situation.
Right.
You should use a tool that, number one, you're comfortable with, and number two is going to present the content well to your students, right?
Yes.
So you could make it in a Google Doc or a Microsoft Doc, or you could put it in Google Classroom just as a list of attachments underneath an assignment, or in Microsoft Teams as a list of attachments underneath an assignment. Anything will work, right? They're all going to get there because it's the choice that's the most important, not the look of it.
Right.
But if you're able to take that extra step up and use something like Sway that can look really engaging and awesome and exciting to the kids, that's just going to level up the engagement. Give that extra little, like Emerald Lagasse back in the day, right? Give that little bam, right? The little kick right there, right?
Yeah. Even I'm just sitting here thinking, like, a lot of teachers will say, well, what tool can I use for XYZ?
Mm-hmm.
And you just brought up a great point. There is no perfect tool. The answer is whatever tool you're comfortable with. What works for me is not going to work for you, and vice versa. You just want to put whatever works for you and your students in your toolbox and pull them out. There's so much out there, and teachers just, even me, and I'm sure you do too, Jake, because there's so much out there, it can get super overwhelming.
Oh, for sure.
And so you will find yourself just kind of using the same things. I do want to plug one thing though, and this is one thing, and I absolutely love it. And people have heard of it, and it's like people just have forgotten about it, but it is so engaging, and I'm building it up. This is the build up.
I don't even know what it is. I'm getting excited though. I feel like I should do a drum roll.
No. Oh, so Mentimeter.
Ah, yeah.
Yes. So on there, the one that I share is, and it's such a simple, easy tool, but if you just need a quick way to engage your students, the Mentimeter, where they can give you, if you pose a question and give them 3 words, the 3-word response option, for when you post that 3-word response option on your screen or on your device, and they're able to see those 3-word response just pop in. It is so cool to see those words just kind of pop in. I think it's super cool. And I know I totally built that up like it was going to be like this, like bam, but I love it. And every time I share it with teachers, they're just like, oh my goodness. And there's so many other things in there that you can play around with, but just the visualization of it really pops. So.
Yeah. So you would when you're using Mentimeter, would you use it like in a presentation? Is that what you're kind of thinking? And then build in those different interactive pieces to build in that engagement?
Yeah, you could totally throw it into a presentation. I've even had it just kind of had that tab open, like to the side. And as I think of like a question that I want to ask, like I'll just say, hey, let's talk about it. And I'll just, because it takes 2 seconds to set it up, I'll throw the question in there, put the little, give them the 3-word, set it up as a 3-word response question, and then hit the share button, put the link to it in the chat in my Zoom or my Teams or whatever, my Google Meet, whatever platform it is that we're using. And then they get to respond. And I put that response screen up, and they just the answers pop in there. And it's just super cool.
Yeah. So for those people listening that haven't used Mentimeter before, it's like you're saying, it's once you generate your Menti or your presentation or whatever you want to call it, or just a one-off activity, like you're saying, it literally is the kids go to, I think it's menti.com, and they type in like a 6-digit code or something like that, or you can give them a link like you're saying there. So it's like you're saying, you can quickly prepare it, get them quickly in it. So it doesn't have to be some drawn out thing that you've made up. It can come up pretty quickly, and then the kids hop in and do that. So tell us about the 3-word response one, because I haven't used the 3-word response one. I use word clouds in Mentimeter a lot, but the basic backend is when you go into Mentimeter, you get almost kind of like a blank slide in the center, like a PowerPoint or Google Slides. You could put some regular content in it, but then there are these pre-formatted activities kind of off to the side, and you click to add those in. So what's the 3-word response one? Is it you just give a prompt and the kids can type in 3 words to respond with?
Yeah. So it probably is the word cloud option. So the way that I set it up is you could have the students enter in either 1 word or 2 words or 3 words. I think you can have them type up to 5 words if I'm not mistaken. But when the responses come in, they do populate in as the word cloud. And then Yeah. So if the answer, like if they answer I don't know, if the number one answer is like carbon,
Yeah.
and like that answer populates the most, of course, that word is going to appear larger and the color is going to be bolder and that kind of thing. So it does populate in like a word cloud. I just call
I
it the
see.
third word response question.
So it's three, like when you do it that way, it's three separate words, not like a 3-word phrase, right?
Right. Three
I
separate
see.
words. Yeah.
In my head, I thought maybe you're doing some activity where they were like coming up with 3 words to answer a question, which would be kind of fun too. Not like a 3-word phrase, like really yummy tacos.
You
That's
know
where my
what?
head went.
There could be an option. There is an option in there to do something like that, though.
Is there
Like
really
like a
the really
text
yummy
response.
taco
Yeah.
option?
Or it could be like Gouda and Colby Jack grilled cheese sandwich. Yeah.
Well, Colby Jack is 2 words though. I think doesn't it count as 2 words? I think it counts as 2
Yeah,
words.
it is. Yeah, that's
Colby
true.
is an adjective and Jack is a noun. Maybe I'm not sure.
We teach science, Jake. Let's stick to science.
Right, exactly. Colby is the genus and Jack is the species. Maybe
There
I'm
you
not sure.
go. There you
That's
go.
it. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Colbyus Jackamus. That's what it is.
There you go.
I like that option. That's a cool idea to build in that engagement. So I have another thought about engagement that I want to throw in too, but I want to rewind back to 2 of the tools you talked about that might be unfamiliar to some of the listeners. So
Okay.
one was Microsoft Sway. So the way I always think about Microsoft Sway is it's halfway between Microsoft PowerPoint or Google Slides, whichever tool you're used to, which is kind of typically kind of a static slideshow.
Yeah.
And I would call it like Adobe Spark Page for people that are familiar with Adobe Spark Page. The way that it functions kind of like a website, but it also has some cool motion stuff built into it, right?
Nail on the head.
Yeah, and then it's got a little dash of Wakelet, how you can kind of pull in a lot of stuff into it, right?
That is like the perfect description. I'm totally stealing that. Yes.
Right.
If all 3 of those had a baby, it would be Sway.
Right. You're a funny looking baby. The only downside I think of Sway compared to a tool like Wakelet is you can't pull as much into Sway as you can in the Wakelet. Like stuff can be links, right? But you can't embed everything you want to into a Sway. But the stuff that you can, I mean, it just looks so cool. It's so slick, right?
Yeah, it is really, really slick. And then, of course, you have like you can put your links in there. You can put your embed codes. I'm trying to think what you could put into a Wakelet that you could not put into a Sway. I'm sitting here thinking.
Yeah, and maybe Wakelet's the wrong. I guess more what I'm thinking of is you can't put as much into a Sway as you can put into a website, like a website builder where you can embed lots of stuff in there.
Yeah,
I feel like Sway has more limitations in there.
Yes.
Like there's certain things where you're like, yeah, you can't put that in, but you can put a link to it in, right? And then have it in there.
Absolutely.
The cool thing about doing something like that, kind of a cool tangent here, because you were saying earlier, there's kind of 2 parts to this, right? One is what you're presenting to the kids, whether it's a hyperdoc or it's a choice board or it's just how you're building up the assignment. And the other part is what they're doing, like your friend Sheldon who made his rap, right? By doing that in a tool like Sway, you're exposing them to a possible tool that they might use for their product coming back to you, right?
Oh, you just made me smile when you said that. Yes.
Right.
Yes,
because
yes.
we're showing them what's possible for them.
Yes. That is, you don't know this. Possibilities is my word of the year for 2021.
Look at that.
I love
It's
that.
the one word, possibilities.
Yes. That is so true. Modeling, that is so true. Modeling by giving them the resources, whether you present it in, gosh, I'm just like spitting off tools now, Bunsey or Sway or Wakelet or whatever. When you present it to your student, it's just exactly what you said. When you present it to your students, that's a tool now that they have in their toolbox to use going forward, which is super important because when our students leave our classrooms and go into the real world, we don't know whether it's college or career, we don't know what they're going to be doing and we don't know what tools they're going to need. And so one thing that I, and this is total tangent, that I want to encourage educators to do is to step out of their comfort zones and expose their students so that their students are armed to go into the next phase of their life with what they need to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I second that for sure. I think one thing we see educators scared of going too far towards the side of the spectrum that you're leaning towards there. You're not saying, at least I assume you're not saying, use all of the tools and integrate 15 new tools this school year, right? You're saying try something new, right?
Yes. Just try something new and be honest with your students. I mean, there were times I was like, look, guys, we're doing something new today. It may work, it may not work. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. Like, fail forward, and your kids will fail forward with you, and teach them to fail forward. Like, it's okay.
That's that modeling, right? Yeah, you're doing that modeling. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they see as you do it, they see, well, if she's willing to take the risk to try this, then I'm willing to take the risk to try this for my project, right? Maybe it's the same thing, maybe it's a different thing, but they start to, even if it's subconsciously, they start to feel comfortable taking those same kinds of positive risks on doing things.
Yeah. And if you see me fail, now you're going to be okay, not be okay, but you'll feel comfortable if you should happen to fail in the class as well. Now we're working on creating that safe environment in our classroom and working on creating that community and family in our classroom.
Yeah. Well, let me take that as a segue to the other thing I wanted to make sure we talked about. So about a month before this comes out, about a month before future Jake and future Natasha are hearing their past voices coming out of their earbuds, right? A month before that time, which is actually tomorrow in my time, I don't even know, who knows. James Varlak was or will be on the show. I'm lost in the space-time continuum. And James and I also talked about engagement and talked about totally different tools, which, by the way, what a great example of how limitless the possibilities are, and that we don't have to use all of them. We just have to pick something we're comfortable with.
Right.
And maybe one thing that we're not to try out. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, James and I were talking about how there's this article, which I'll link in the show notes, that talks about breaking down engagement into 3 categories. And one is emotional, which you were just kind of talking about that right there, right? That modeling of risk taking, that modeling of that safe environment, that building of community when you are able to see each other as risk takers and not have to worry about the judge. Like, it's almost like a judgment-free zone, right? That's that emotional engagement, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other 2 are behavioral engagement and cognitive engagement. So you're talking about a lot of things that offer in cognitive engagement here. And that cognitive engagement is, being engaged by what you're learning about and what you're creating to model that learning that you're doing. But also the behavioral engagement is kind of what I don't want to speak for you, but what I viewed engagement as, 2 decades ago when I was starting my career in education, which was everybody's sitting in their seat looking forward and listening to me, right? That's behavioral engagement. And you want that, but right, for the most part, when it's the appropriate thing to be doing, you want behavioral engagement, but it's not the only piece of it. But I think that with emotional engagement and with cognitive engagement comes behavioral engagement. So that stuff's going to come along with these other things as your kids get into these projects that you've, enabled them to do, and these choice boards that you've given them the opportunity to do. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've said absolutely. We should do like a little word count, how many times I've said that in the podcast.
Anybody who wants to restart this episode, listen and count up the absolutely's, send me a count, and I will send you stickers. The first person,
my goodness.
The first person to send me the Natasha, and you've got a columns. I want to see a competition. How many Jake absolutely's there are, and how many Natasha absolutely's there are, and I will send you stickers. First person. I love it.
That is so, that is true though. And I think you have to have there has to be a good balance or representation of the 3. And when you talked about creating the connections and the projects, giving the students choice, how it all kind of works together. I think when you do that, it creates that empowerment, it creates that engagement, it creates that ownership. And I do think there's something to be said about, and even us as grownups, right? Like there's something to be said about when you're creating something that you have taken ownership over, and when you're learning something, whether it's listening to a podcast, like I've listened to several of your podcasts, and you're learning, and then I go do it at the same time, and I can pause and I can go do it at the same time. When you're learning that way, it sticks so much better when you're actually able to create and do.
Yeah.
And so there is a connection and a balance between the 3 of those. So yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, and so you're saying by doing those types of things in your classrooms, you're doing things that bring cognitive and behavioral and emotional engagement all together, right? Because by being empowered, by being cognitively engaged and empowered to do something, they are feeling emotionally engaged because they're empowered, and because they're excited about the thing that they're doing, they become behaviorally engaged too, right?
Yes.
And this reminds me of probably my favorite book, definitely my top 3 books, Drive by Daniel Pink. Have you read Drive?
It is sitting on my bookshelf. It's
Oh,
been on my bookshelf for about
oh,
a year and a half. I have not read it yet.
oh my gosh. Could you please start reading it tomorrow and then
I
tell me what you think
will.
of it?
I will.
You don't, okay, you don't have to start tomorrow, but you're going to read this book and you're going to go like, oh my gosh, this is what we were talking about, right? Because
Okay.
he talks about the 3 pieces of motivation, which motivation and engagement kind of are parallels, right? They're like cousins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about the 3 parts are autonomy, right? Giving them some choice, which you hit on.
Okay.
Mastery, right? Seeking to get better at something that's worth getting better at, right?
Okay.
Which you're doing here with your content. And purpose, and he talks in the book about how purpose isn't always attainable. Like you can't always have a greater purpose for what you're doing. But when we can get that in, we reach those true levels of motivation. And those first 2, autonomy and mastery. So you're saying pick some tools and some strategies in your instruction that give kids some autonomy and let them reach for their own mastery, right? And science says, you're going to be reading this book tomorrow and you're going to find out science says that is how you motivate a human right there. Like that's the recipe.
I am totally going to grab this book off my shelf tonight.
Put it in your bag right now.
I totally am.
You just did. Put it back. I'm fully expecting a message from you in the next couple of days. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so parallels what we were talking about, because it really does.
Wow.
It really does.
I mean, and then it goes into purpose, and you're right, motivation and engagement. You're right.
Yeah. Can we, so I was planning on wrapping up after we talked about that there, but I want to, speaking of purpose, there was something in your bio that we didn't touch on, and I want to make sure that I give you an opportunity, like a minute or 2, to kind of summarize what this is, because I think this is a really good example of autonomy and mastery and purpose. And that's the Minecraft Good Trouble lessons, which I've really been enjoying seeing you share about that on social media. And I know that a lot of our listeners here, I guess I don't know. I'm guessing that a lot of our listeners are aware of what Minecraft is and know that kids love it, but don't actually know that much about Minecraft. And therefore going from not knowing how Minecraft really works to taking the leap to know how the Good Trouble lessons fits into it is a stretch it's probably pushing their imagination a little bit too far. But it's certainly, I mean, goodness, a strong autonomy, like kids would love to choose Minecraft. Mastery is what video games are, right? And obviously the Good Trouble lessons are for sure purposeful, right? So could you tell us what those are?
Yes. Thank you so much for bringing it up. So I just have to give a huge shout out to Felisa Ford and Ken Shelton. The 3 of us work together on these Good Trouble lessons. When it's all said and done, it is going to be a set of 10 lessons. They're actually already created. They will be finished being uploaded at the end of February. They focus on social justice. They focus on Good Trouble. We start with John Lewis and the Good Trouble movement. Students will go through these lessons. They will learn about identity. They will learn about the social justice movements. They will learn about Black Lives Matter. They will learn about Malala and Gandhi and Emmeline Pankhurst and the women's suffragette movement. They'll learn about Nelson Mandela. There's so much good stuff in there. So to your point, really quickly, teachers that want to learn more can go to education.minecraft.net. You can set up a free account. And one thing that teachers, if you're a Google teacher, one thing you may not know is that you get access, students and teachers, to the Microsoft Suite for free with any education email account. So you can go to education.minecraft.net. You can claim your free Minecraft account. And there are lessons, not just the Good Trouble lessons, but there are tons of lessons that are in there that are teacher created. But I want to push you, of course, to the Good Trouble lessons.
Yeah.
There are.
I don't think that's going to require a very big push. I mean, you, the things you named that are part of it, like I think they've already been pushed. Like you don't have to push any further. I mean, that's how awesome is that?
Yeah.
You know?
full comprehensive lesson plans, and the students actually learn by playing Minecraft. So the activities are built in Minecraft. And let me just say this, I am not a Minecraft expert. As we speak, I'm actually in a Minecraft Teacher Academy cohort that meets every Wednesday to learn how to play Minecraft. So even if you've never played Minecraft a day in your life, the lessons are created that you could take that lesson and like put it in your lesson plan, like unit that you have to create for your administration, and give the lessons to your students. Once they're in, trust me, your students know how to play Minecraft. They'll be able to figure it out.
Autonomy, mastery, purpose, right?
Absolutely. Oh, I love it. I'm going to read the book tonight.
You know what I'm thinking now? We were talking earlier about before we were recording. Natasha was saying she had to lock herself in her bedroom and send the husband and I think you said son to different rooms to do their things. And I joked that we could pretend that the podcast took 3 hours so you could have more me time. You're going to end up pretending you're on the podcast this whole time, but you're going to be reading.
I sure am.
You were disappointed you didn't bring your bottle of wine with you, but instead you have your book. That's all you need.
Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. We need that on a sticker or a t-shirt, Jake.
Indeed. You're going to love the book. And I think everybody else is going to love, speaking of love, they're going to love hearing this interview and hearing everything you shared, because what a wealth of information, Natasha. Thank you so much for sharing all this stuff. I was going to share something else, but I don't need to. I mean, the list of tools and things like that that are going to be in these show notes. I don't think the listeners need to hear anything else from me. They heard enough awesomeness from you. I think that covers them.
Jake, you're amazing. It is, like I said, such an honor to talk to you. You are now on my BFF list, and you are stuck with me for life. So it's me and you against the world, Jake.
On the BFF list. I made it, you guys. I could see, what's going to happen after COVID ends and we're able to travel and everything. You and I are going to have a movie night, and we're going to watch just the series of TGIF shows. We're going to have some popcorn, binge the dinosaur show and Mr. Cooper until we get to your episode.
Absolutely. Yes. Let's do it. And it's so funny, like, because we know each other from, like, everybody knows everybody from social media, right? So when ISTE finally does happen, like, I can just picture like seeing you on the floor in the vendor hall and just like running up to you and giving you like the biggest hug ever. So for
sure. I miss hugs. We're going to be back to hugs someday, right?
I hope so. I do. That's the one thing I miss. I'm a hugger, so I miss it.
For sure. Well, I am ready for that ISTE 2021 or 2022 hug. Whenever it happens, I'm ready. And I will be first in line to see whatever you're presenting on there, because you're awesome. This was some great stuff you shared today.
Thank you. Ditto, ditto, ditto.
All right. Thanks for being with us tonight, okay?
Thanks, Jake.
That was so much fun. I told you you'd hear her smile right through your earpods or speakers. I hope that you're going to run out and follow Natasha and her brilliant work. I bet you already have, actually, while you were listening. In the meantime, while the rest of you are going out to follow her, let's review what Natasha and I discussed. We discussed choice boards and student choice. I shared some quotes from Linda Darling Hammond and Alfie Kohn, which I'll include in the show notes. Natasha shared about the Flipgrid Discovery Library, which has tons of pre-made content that you could use as is or modify to fit your needs. I'll include a link in the show notes to that as well. Pretty much anything I say, I'll include a link to it in the show notes. She also tried to sell us on some Microsoft tools like Sway. Oh, you're trying to switch this Googler over to Microsoft, Natasha. Be careful. But I do love Sway, and remember my description of Sway being kind of like PowerPoint mashed up with Adobe Spark pages with a touch of Wakelet in it. And they're really cool. If you have not tried out Sway, I definitely recommend it. And as she pointed out, if you're a Google district, as long as your school doesn't have it turned off, you do have free access to the Microsoft suite of tools as well. One of my favorite things that she mentioned was her focus on getting students to visualize and verbalize their thinking. I like that a lot. She also mentioned Buncee and using the word cloud response in Mentimeter. And that feature, by the way, you could choose how many responses each student can get between, I think it's like 1 and 10, and the default is 3. So each response doesn't have to be one word. You could say that the kids make each response one word, but that's what she was referring to. I was a little confused, but the kids will see boxes, like text boxes, like they're responding to a prompt in like Microsoft Forms or Google Forms or something, and you choose how many boxes they see. So she says she leaves it at the default of 3, and they use 3 words to describe whatever they're learning about in class, and that is in Mentimeter. Mentimeter has free and paid versions. You could use that feature for sure in the free version, and we covered Mentimeter in a previous podcast, and I broke down the difference between the free and the paid then as well. Natasha and I also connected Daniel Pink's book Drive and its focus on autonomy, mastery, and purpose back to what we were talking about, which was student choice and engagement. And I'll include a link to Pink's book as well as his TED Talk in the show notes in case you want to get a little more information about that. And finally, Natasha told us all about the free Minecraft Good Trouble resources and reminded us, as I mentioned earlier, that even Google teachers and Google School students get free access to the Microsoft Suite and, therefore, the Minecraft EDU resources. So you don't just have to be in a Microsoft district to get that as long as your school doesn't have it blocked or anything like that. Okay. Woo! So much good stuff. So much good stuff. Last but certainly not least, time for my favorite part of the show, which is the celebration of the adjacent possible. So adjacent possible is the idea that whatever you do, whatever you try, whoever you talk to, whoever you listen to, wherever you go, opens you up to new adjacent possibilities, things that are right next to what's already possible for you. And the connections and discussions between me and you, and me and Natasha, and you, between duct tapers, between educators, those open up our adjacent possibilities. So this is my time to celebrate some of those things. So today we're going to expand our adjacent possible with a question that was posted on the Educational Duct Tapers Facebook group. The link to that group is, as always, in every episode, it is in the show notes if you ever want to join us there on Facebook. Anyhow, Jenny Ahlers, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your last name right, but she asked this question.
This is a question for fellow ELA teachers. Do any of you use Jamboard? If so, how? I have read and heard that Jamboard is awesome, but that is also a whole new program to add to this year. I am just looking for benefits or feedback on it.
By the way, shout out to the unofficial Immersive Reader Chrome extension for reading that out loud for me. Did an awesome job, better than Siri's been in the last few episodes. So I think Microsoft Immersive Reader may be getting the job as my official text-to-speech tool of the Educational Duct Tape podcast. But anyhow, Jenny's question, how can she use Google Jamboard in ELA? And I think the question really was, should she be using it in there? She couldn't quite see the possibilities. She's nervous about using something new, and she wanted to see, is it worth it? Should she be buying in? So before I even had a chance to respond, the duct tapers had already swooped in. And that's what the adjacent possible is, right? One person posed a question, and then other people, the ideas kind of go and go and go and go, and then we all get ideas from each other. So here's a few of them. Kathy Hulbert said, I like it for quick exit tickets and for fun warm-ups. Both great ideas. Melissa Shields shared, I like Jamboard for collaboration and to allow creativity on individual assignments. Yeah, it's wonderful for collaboration, Melissa. Great point. My buddy Molly Clodar said, I teach high school ELA and I use it for 4 corner activities. I make a grid on the page and have them add a sticky note to answer each of the corners for one work. I also use it to encourage discussions where I normally do a gallery walk or a station activity. So Molly's talking about this is the way she replicates these face-to-face in the classroom activities in a digital environment using Google Jamboard. Jamboard? Rebecca Rawls-Krosky said, I have used it for a digital silent graffiti activity that went really well. I'm going to have to look up what digital silent graffiti activities is and check that out. She also said it can be a great tool for modeling thinking, helping students plan long projects, etc. Ooh, great for that planning stage. That's great. And probably for brainstorming too. I'm throwing that in myself. And that's adjacent possible out there, by the way, guys. But the ultimate way in considering its usage is to start with your learning goal or target in mind and work backward from there. Sounds like Rebecca has taken over the show for me. She says, who was it that asked this question? Jenny, think about what your goals are and then see if Jamboard happens to fit that need. And maybe it doesn't, right? And finally, Melissa Hart Labata has listed exit tickets, SEL check-ins, short responses to a question, favorite part of our read aloud book, birthday compliments and messages, asking questions about a theme or a topic, modeling, story maps, or graphic organizers. So lots of ideas. And that wasn't all of the stuff that was shared there. There were more adjacent possible connections and tangents that the conversation went on. So if you'd like to add your response or see the responses or add a question of your own, head to the Facebook group that's linked in the show notes. And if you've got a question, you could tweet it to me at Jake Miller Tech, email it to me, jakemillertech@gmail.com, add it in that Facebook group where you'll hear from some of the other duct tapers, submit it on the show's Flipgrid at flipgrid.com/edu duct tape, or record a message on my SpeakPipe page, which is at speakpipe.com/edu duct tape. And finally, last thing before the bell rings and I let you go out of the classroom and put your backpacks on your shoulders and walk out, here's your homework for this week. I'm a teacher. I got to give you some homework, right? I'd like you to find a colleague who is a fan of the Black Keys. They're one of my favorite bands. They're from my neck of the woods, Akron, Ohio, and I still remember seeing them play when they were first starting out here in Akron at the Lime Spider in downtown Akron was the first time I saw them. Anyhow, your homework is to find an educator who likes the Black Keys, like me, and tell them about this show. Not because Dan and Pat are going to be on a future episode, but because that person must be awesome, and I want them as a listener. So let them know about Educational Duct Tape. Okay, so that does it for today's episode. You've got your homework, you've got your learning, we reviewed it, we're all good to go. Don't forget that you can check the show notes for details about signing up for my newsletter, joining that Duct Tapers Facebook group that we talked about, inquiring about having me speak at an upcoming event, getting some podcast stickers, and more. As always, as a parent, I'm grateful for the work you do, and as an educator, I'm proud of your dedication to lifelong learning. All right, guys, I'll see you in a fortnight.
Thank you for listening to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. Please visit eduducttape.com to join the discussion, share possible topics, inquire about being a guest, or contact Jake. And remember, duct is spelled with a T, not a quack quack K.